Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the House of Kayfabe. Adam Harris in this corner, standing across the ring. It's the other Steve Barker. We wanted to catch up to talk about, from the producers of Dark Side of the Ring, Tales of the Territories, Tuesdays at 10 p.m. We all have something to look forward to finally on Tuesdays because NXT ain't been it.
No, you are the only one, I think, in the house that actually watches NXT regularly. Are you still doing that to yourself?
No, not recently. I haven't been, honestly.
Oh, wow.
Because of some things and just because of not out of a great desire to see it. Like, I don't think there's anything on there I need to watch, actually. But
I think I see all I need to see on Nikita Lyons' Instagram, and I'll just put it like at that.
There you go.
That's
yeah, these days you can get a lot of clips on the internet and not have to waste 2 hours and sit through the commercials and all that. But anyway, we're going to talk more about NXT on another episode, which if you're not following the House of Kayfabe on YouTube, you should be. We're pumping out a bunch of content. We are going to be at WrestleCade. I hope you're going to be there too. Getting a lot of good footage down there as well. So make sure you hit the subscribe button. Check out some of my fig hunts. We've got a couple toy episodes in the can and some card episodes, some collectible stuff. And at WrestleCade, it's the return of Franchised with Shane Douglas. And our resident Brian Resner will be there as well. But today, I thought we'd talk about Tales of the Territories, man. And I got to say, like, I really do look forward to these things. And when the pandemic first happened, man, there was like a Dark Side of the Ring season that hit like kind of early on in the pandemic. And it was like one of those things that helped get me through it. I was so thankful to have something to look forward to. The same way people looked forward to that Michael Jordan thing, like The Last Dance or whatever it was, it was like that big of a deal to me,
Man, have you noticed that? I don't know if have you noticed that like we enjoy talking about wrestling, things that explore what we like in the past almost as much as some of the modern product. Two things. One, that's great when we have more. Yeah. Well, great. Two things. Like one, it's great that we have this content that reminds us why we love wrestling. But then it almost like taints what we're watching right now a little bit. And that being said, WWE, I think, is definitely on the uptick. AEW is something we're going to discuss in the next episode. We're not going to get into that today. But, when you think about Jim Cornette and Dave Meltzer and all of your favorite podcasts and, Kevin Nash. Kevin Nash now absolutely is coming out and Mick Foley's in the biz now. We as wrestling fans like just talking about wrestling as much as we like watching matches.
And we're so attached to that stuff. Like hearing Kurt Angle talk about what it was like to fight Brock Lesnar at WrestleMania 19 is the best person you can hear talk about it. I've been enjoying a few of his episodes as well, man. But you're absolutely right. It's part of the reason we're here. We love talking about wrestling. It's like what we do. And this Tales of the Territory, apparently, it's not necessarily journalistic approach. It's more like these guys, we put them around a table, we rolled tape, and we let the stories fly. And I don't think there was a lot of fact checking that had to go into this.
Not at all.
Still some really cool interactions, reenactments, like still really cool on that. And the thing I'm looking forward to the most is like some of that rarely seen footage. What I mean? Like we don't see that much anymore. A lot of it we know is out there or it's not been restored. It's like fifth generation. In this, there was especially like some footage of Jerry Lawler getting thrown by Joe Leduc, where he specifically mentioned grabbing the top rope and it ruined his fall and made him get really injured, injured.
Yeah. Didn't he say he cut a muscle in his leg?
That's what he said. Yeah. I didn't understand that part exactly. But again, man, it didn't seem like there was a lot of retakes in this,
There's no fact checking when you got storytellers telling stories. Do not let the facts get in the way of a good story. And I think we had some of that in this episode. Vice is just so good at this. They're so good at this. We got Dark Side of the Ring that has really like reinvigorated a lot of people's love of wrestling. I have a really good friend who is he's an Attitude War, Monday Night Wars guy, and he only talks about that. But probably the last wrestling content that he watched was Dark Side stuff. He specifically sought out the Chris Benoit episodes, and he specifically sought out the Brian Pillman episodes.
Right, and that speaks to what a lot of those people were into at the time. But then it's also like getting behind that curtain, literally like peeking behind the scenes, and it's like the way you experienced back then is not the way you experience it today, looking back on it. And I got to wonder, like, so this table had Jimmy Hart, Jeff Jarrett, Jerry Jarrett, his dad, and the Jerry the King Lawler and Dutch Mantel. And when you want to think about the miles between these guys,
hundreds of millions.
And one of the first things I picked up on this whole after watching this is like, how many people did Jimmy Hart go to the ring with?
Hundreds.
How many different wrestlers? In this episode alone, he was like walking to the ring with almost everybody, including the Iron Sheik.
I didn't know that one. And man, he still looks great.
Oh yeah.
He's well into his 70s, and I know there's a little hair dye in there, but he still looks good.
Oh, for sure.
And all of them actually did. There's a lot of miles. Jerry Lawler is still wrestling, right?
Oh,
he's definitely wrestled this year, right?
Well, I don't know, but he was at ASW a couple summers ago, man, and did a drop kick.
Yeah, he's still dropping the strap in many independent promotions. What this is what I think people who disparage the new product, the modern product, is you see guys who are telling stories. I think one of the things that some of the old school fans here at the House of Kayfabe miss is a story that's being told in a match form. And with the modern flippy shit kind of wrestling, there's not a story being told it's Cirque du Soleil, and it's impressive. It is athletic. It is something that none of those people that we watch could ever do. Nobody at that table could do 1/5 of what today's modern wrestler can do, but they told better stories, and they're still relevant decades later.
Yeah. And so this one specifically was on the Memphis territory. And the thing I picked up on the most, and, immediately, and I know Stephen P. New would love this because it was like the very first thing they said is like, one thing was true to all these guys. And it's like, in Memphis, wrestling was real. And it might seem hard. I'm wondering if people even younger than us, don't actually think that was the real deal or whatever, but it was as early as that stuff, as recently as that late 80s period of the Memphis and the end of the territories.
That's why it has prevailed. That's why it is still talked about. That stuff looked real. Well, I mean, there's that one scene that Jerry the King Lawler gets hit by a car. Like, there was no Hollywood trickery.
No stunt man, no retakes. Yeah.
No, he just hit me with a car.
No. And people were calling the station. Is Jerry Lawler okay? And that's the other thing. We should just go ahead and get into this. But I mean, they talked about, I think the person was named Cookie that would take the calls at the Memphis studio.
Right.
Like, first of all, they're literally live on Saturday morning.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess that would be the Twitter of its day. Like, nowadays, everybody would like tweet something about what they saw on TV. Back then, you called the TV station, you got through to somebody. And there was that one instance where a couple guys, it was the Jimmy Hart, Iron Sheik instance, where guys were going to come down there. They were talking about bringing their guns and coming down there for Jimmy Hart. And whether it was real or not, dude, they had to treat it like it was real, because that was a real threatening situation, and we can't imagine it being that serious today.
Well, that shows the dedication that those guys had to protecting the business.
Truly.
I was like, we're not tough guys. And Jimmy Hart's probably not a tough guy. But if somebody said, you're disrespecting this country, I'm coming to shoot you, wouldn't your first thing to be like, I'm joshing, just playing? And none of that was happening. They were keeping the angle going and trying to be as safe with it as they possibly could.
Well, and in the one case, it was great too. And people wonder how they took fans back there and beat the living hell out of them, and that was normal. And some people say, how are they not in jail for this? But it's like, old dude isn't going to go against that a second time after getting beat up. And of course, the wrestlers aren't going to take it to court, because all of a sudden that brings into question whether it's real or not. And so somebody has to break the business down, like would end up happening in the Beckley case, in the Stephen P. New referenced material here on the House of Kayfabe involving the God Emperor. But man, I just think about, and that stuff with Mario Galento, like, I didn't know about that. they said this guy has a heel face, which I liked hearing them say. Like, we always knew this guy had a heel face. And I guess he was on his way out of the business, but was like partners. Jerry Jarrett was partners with Roy Welch, right? Is that the name? Yeah, Roy Welch.
Yeah.
And
he
Welch apparently was having dementia and thought that maybe Jarrett was trying to take over.
Well, no, that's a shoot, because that actually did happen. If you really dig this Territories, your Tales from the Territories episode, there is a excellent documentary that you must go watch immediately called Memphis
Heat. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm sure you've seen it. And in Memphis Heat, they talk about it. They were, I don't know what the alliance was, but it was ran by Roy Welch. I think, a comment section, we're probably getting this wrong, let us know. But Jerry Jarrett actually did split apart from them and take their spot on whatever station they were, because he had Jerry the King Lawler. So that is a shoot. He was separated, because what it was is the territory was what it was, and then he let Jerry Jarrett book a certain amount of towns, and then he blew that up so big that he got powerful enough to be like, oh, hey, kind of outlaw a little, like, oh, I could just split apart, and I can take your television spot.
Cutthroat.
So that was real. That was, there was money involved. There were food on the table, and only in the wild, wonderful world of wrestling would be the way that you fix it is to hire, a wrestler, a journeyman wrestler to beat the hell out of the star that made it possible for them to split apart and take their TV. There's the famous story of Vern Gagne supposedly trying to pay the Road Warriors to break Hulk Hogan's leg, or was it Iron Sheik to break Hulk Hogan's leg?
Oh, I don't remember that. I know somebody did. I thought it was like Masachono or something.
Well, no,
like,
when he got
his first training, I guess.
Yeah, when he got first training, but no, it would have definitely been the Iron Sheik then, because I think the Iron Sheik came from the AWA. And like Vern Gagne, Hulk Hogan got peeled from the AWA and went to WWF, and Iron Sheik was going there, and Vern Gagne was like, hey, break this guy's leg. This is how. So not only was it real in front of the camera, kayfabe, it kind of was real in the back. Because, this was big business. People, you will go to an AW show and see 4,000, 5,000 people, maybe tonight, maybe way less than that. But, they were selling out with a Memphis Coliseum every Monday. Yeah. This is many, many dollars that was involved, right? These were big, huge.
They were doing like 3 major cities a week. Every week they were doing 3 major cities with all the towns in between, alternating month by month by month, man. It's hard to think about. And it could never happen again. Like, that's the deal. Nah. Like, no matter how big a promotion gets, they're never going to have a TV presence. They could have a live following, but it won't have that same online or TV presence. Every wrestler in that situation is going to try to get up to one of the bigger leagues, no matter what. Mm-hmm. And it's going to happen a lot faster these days. Word travels fast. And it'll just never be that way. And I think that's another reason there's just this insatiable appetite for
the good old days
like this. Yes, exactly. Talking about the good old days, man. Are you looking forward to, well, we should stick around on this episode, I guess. But
yeah, because I do want to hit on that, because there's one that I'm really looking forward to in the future.
Okay, yeah, we'll talk about the future episodes. But man, the one I watched this back most of the episode a second time, and the part I loved the most was Joe Leduc, because I don't think that's somebody that's talked about a lot, and I certainly kind of like knew that name, and I've seen him in some old wrestling magazines and a couple programs I have, but like, never seen any footage of this guy, and he was apparently a legitimate strongman
and a lunatic and a crazy
yes,
because there's that video of him holding the car back with his legs, and that's a straight shoot.
Unbelievable.
There's no Hollywood trickeration in fucking Memphis, Tennessee in 1981.
No. And yeah, I don't know. There's no faking that, which is another reason like people thought it was real. Like, this is as legit as it can be on television, man. It's not the same as today. Like when Braun Strowman flips the ambulance or whatever it is, or Brock rips the door off the car,
right.
It's just not the same. They're all trying for something like that. It's almost like chasing the dragon. We're all looking for something that might just remind us of
smidge. Well, look at it.
Yeah,
What was the biggest wrestling story over the last month or two? And it was legitimate, real heat
that's right.
backstage, and
Yep.
we marks could not get. We were
Enough. Yeah, that's right.
mainlining that shit, dude.
Yeah.
Just a smidge of reality in our wrestling was enough for us to become wrestling dirt sheet junkies for like 2 weeks. Our chat room one day will be available on our Patreon. It was every day somebody else got a little bit more of a nugget of the story of maybe they did kick in the door, maybe the Young Bucks didn't kick in the door. That just shows how much we're hungered. We hunger for. We want to feel that Santa Claus is real. It's why I don't like modern wrestling that winks at me.
Mm-hmm.
Present it to me like it's real.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Do
Yeah.
that.
Make me think you're at least angry at this guy. Like,
dude, I've cried at movies. That shit ain't real.
exactly. Exactly.
End of Mr. Hollands Opus every fucking time I cry.
Well, and I cried at the end of what was it, Sheamus and Gunther, a couple weeks ago. It's like that was a great freaking match. It was like I couldn't hold it back, and because it finally seemed like something real, it seemed like these two guys were beating the shit out of each other.
A 5-star WWE match, one of the first ones in a long, long time.
Another thing that nobody was talking about after the scrum, but enough about that already.
Yeah,
Joe Leduc, who is obviously real enough that he brings out an axe,
and legitimately cuts his hand or his arm. I had seen that before. That's one of the things.
Okay, because I definitely had not, man. That was something that is that in the documentary too?
That's in wrestling or in Memphis Heat. I had definitely seen him do the car gimmick. So there was a bunch of this stuff that I'd seen, but there was a bunch of stuff, and that's one of the things that Vice is really good at. Those guys are really plugged into. I'm assuming like collectors. And tape traders who have stuff that isn't owned by WWE, because that's another thing. A lot of this stuff, WWE does not work with Vice. You know what I mean?
Is that true? Because I was wondering about the whole Rock connection though. Like, would it be that simple that maybe the Rock could get some of that footage? Maybe.
He's The Rock. He's going to be the next president. He can do whatever he wants to. And the WWE just has to be like, okay, sweet, please come to WrestleMania. Look up at the lights for your cousin. You know what I mean?
This is one of the first products, and I thought about this too. It does not have a WWE brand to it, not a WWE tilt to it. Even though those guys around the table, with the exception of Jarrett, who's only recently kind of become associated with this time period,
but did work behind the scenes at WWE, because you remember during the Vince McMahon steroid scandal, that's who ran.
He was standing by. Yeah, for sure. We didn't know that back then, like not like we knew Jerry Lawler was a star and Jimmy Hart was an awesome manager. It was different. But this was not a WWE production, even though I will say it reminds me of one of my favorite programs, which is the Legends Roundtables that were great. On the original. Most of those are on YouTube. There's DVDs of them. And there's some of them are on Peacock now, but that was from the original WWE 24/7 channel, which was like on cable. So still not on demand. You had to pay extra for it, but you were only watching what they showed you. It was like a channel that was all WWE programming, but those are really cool, and I've binge watched those a couple times.
And
so
the
this
table
format,
of 3 or table of 4, or whatever it was,
that's good too. That's good too. Yeah, that's forced because they serve them food. I like when P.S. Hayes is like smoking a cigar. The whole thing.
Got him hanging from rafters, kids.
Yeah, exactly. And so I love that program, and this is not far off from that. I will say they probably did take a cue from Legends Roundtable for this, because Jeff Jarrett's kind of the host in this situation. He knows how to keep the program going, catch people up in a couple instances where it was necessary. But I will say, like, this is not a casual viewer thing necessarily. Like they go pretty deep, pretty quick,
Well, what you just said, this isn't a WWE branded show, but remember Dark Side of the Ring, and obviously that's seedy, and we like controversy, and we like watching that. I'm going to be interested in seeing how this does rating wise. But I think what it shows is like there is a want for wrestling that isn't necessarily WWE, because nothing is more far removed than Memphis wrestling. That is dirty, gritty, bloody, you know, racist sometimes because of, you know, it's reflecting the times,
certainly the heyday.
times.
Yeah, certainly the heyday. I mean, Memphis was associated with WWE in the 90s, though. Like it was kind of a territory, but that was different than this. Yeah, that was
it shows that like something like, you know, God, hopefully AEW is able to survive. We don't need to have the WWE logo there to enjoy wrestling. You know what I mean? Like that's a thing. We
need the faces we know, faces we trust, actually,
and stories being told.
How do you feel about Dutch Mantel, by the way? That's another guy who has a good podcast. Like you get a story from him, man, and he's a great storyteller. He was around for so many things.
He's the best. I love him. I loved him as Zeb Coulter. I think that was one of those gimmicks or angles that if they would have done it like they would have done it in Memphis, and like, because they just danced around the Tea Party, politic, immigrant, you know, illegal immigrant, you know, thing. Yeah. If they'd have just and you know, Dutch Mantel was in the back just like, let me go full on. I will get this place full. People will want to fucking kill me when I get done.
He'd be like Jerry Lawler in Jonesboro, Arkansas, with his tires slashed and a brick through his window.
And man, this is just, it's people who are able to tell a story physically in the ring. All are just great storytellers. And that's what we want. When you watch your television show, you want a good story. When you read your novel, you want a good story. And you know, the characters that exist in the wild, wonderful, wacky world of professional wrestling. Adam, of course, is the greatest independent announcer on the scene today, and he gets to see a little bit of that backstage. And he's also a taxi cab for a lot of people going back and forth between the airport and the indie shows that he announces. And you've gotten to be this fly on the wall
sometimes. Yeah.
And we're not going to talk about any of that on here.
No, we can't. We're not. No, that's confidential for sure, for sure. And believe me, most of the time, I think they just forget I'm there. Like if there's more than one worker in the car, you know, like look, they're on the same wavelength, you know, and they might chime in and ask me a question every once in a while. But for the most part, all I have to do is sit back and listen to them chat, you know, which is one of the great things about this. You know, I mean, the filmmakers who shout out, you know, we should give to Jason Eisner and Evan Husney, and of course, partnering with The Rock on this. You know, they've who knows what got left on the cutting room floor, you know? So I'm so excited for this. One thing I was going to point out about Joe Leduc was that the promos, you know, like looking at that and seeing how intense that was. And like, you could feel how awkward it was. And Lance Russell, God bless him, standing there is just kind of like, oh,
I can't believe this is happening.
But he actually can though. Like he's not freaked out or anything. He's just like reacting and oh, how could you, you know, but yet it's like within the realm of possibility for him yet, you know, but yet it's like, oh, actually that might've been a step too far. And I think that in a long way, this is part of why we have scripted promos today. Like this is why you can't just trust someone to go on television, but it's also the beautiful thing about this is like they told Joe Leduc, get out there. You've got 3 minutes.
Get it over. Get your batch over.
And not even question the sharp blade on the axe that he's carrying out there.
It's insane. We want to see, like you said, really that the Sheamus Walter, and I'm not ever going to call him Gunther. It's Walter to me. And I think they might get that name back on him at some point. The Walter Sheamus match, that could have been a Memphis wrestling match.
For sure.
That would have lived wonderfully on a Monday at the Memphis Coliseum. And it just shows that, like, you know, sports-based entertainment works when you know, when you watch that match, and you would never see it at all in Memphis wrestling. There was no wink. There was no nod.
No,
we're two gladiators, and we're trying to win. We want to win the money. We want to win the belt, and we want to, you know, do it. And that's what it was all about. And that's what it was in Memphis.
Proving your dominance against another alpha male. You know, sometimes that's as simple as it gets.
I'd do anything to just go back and get to go to a Louisville Gardens.
Oh yeah, match. Yeah. Wouldn't that have been awesome? Or some of these hot Louisiana territories that you hear Cornette talking about. Well, and I will say, you know, like I was kind of surprised at first how long it took to get to Dutch Mantel, because I was kind of like, for a minute there, he was only chiming in here and there. They showed his reactions and stuff. But then the final couple stories were from the Pearce when Dutch really shone here, and talk about a great storyteller he is. But we were talking in the chat a little bit about the part that blew my mind, and I had not seen this. I don't know if this is in Memphis Heat or not either, but where they show up on the show that's called Old Pine Sessions or whatever on PBS, and it's KET television in Kentucky. Their public television station had a weekly show, I guess, for several seasons, apparently. And on one of them, it's like the Percussion All-Stars doing an original composition called War Games. And there's a room for, and Dutch calls them arts patrons. They're not wrestling fans. These are upper class people. It's not cab drivers or farmers or police officers. It's the upper class of people watching this. And all of a sudden, towards the end, and the ultimate set is this ring coming up from the orchestra pit, and it's Jeff Jarrett versus Dutch Mantel. Man, had you seen this?
No. And, I am a drummer. It's what I do in my real job. I'm a drum teacher. I also run a drum YouTube
This
channel.
was the most Steve Barker thing I've ever seen.
I'm going to make a video on my channel about it, because it's all the things that I love.
Oh my
drums God. And wrestling and
PBS.
And you know what? When he said that it was in the Smithsonian, I was like, work. But
I believe it. Me too.
It is actually in the Smithsonian.
It is, for sure. And I sent it. I was going to say, because it's a guy who donated his videotape collection, and it's a season of this program. And I'm going to get it right here in a second. Lonesome Pine Specials, which is actually a Carter family song. I also found that out. But you can scroll through this, and the guy has, I don't know, even 40 tapes or something like this. And it's all people that, you and I are in the music business. I mean, a lot of these people were on Mountain Stage, the show I work with. I mean, the Rebirth Bass Band, Bela Fleck is all over here. I love that Lonnie Brooks is on here, like amazing Irish music. There's a ton of good stuff on here. But then sure enough, we found
Dutch Mantel versus Jeff Jarrett, baby.
According to this, number 205, Masters of Percussion. And this was 1989, August 2nd of 1989.
Oh, it's so good.
And it mentions a bunch of apparently legendary masters of percussion, including somebody from Spyro Gyro, which is like a band, right?
Dave Samuels. Is it Dave Samuels?
Yeah. Well, Master Dave Samuels. Yep. North American snare drum and rototone champions.
For my senior recital in college, I actually played a Dave Samuels composition.
Wow, there you go. All right.
That's a shoot. And what that is like what we've been talking about is, man, this is a real fucking art form. When you think about what jazz music is, it is an American art form. Now, it is an amalgamation of other cultures, and
for sure,
classic Americana bastardization of all these things, and we make it into something better. Pro wrestling is as American as it gets, and it is an art form.
Absolutely. And we've even talked on this channel about how it should be an Olympic sport. And we think it could be legitimate,
should be.
It's far more legitimate than some sports.
Yeah, if you can judge like somebody flipping around on a fucking mat, the Young Bucks do a lot of flippy shit. They can do the
or an
same
ice
shit.
rink, man, with some amazing costumes. This is glorified choreography at its best, but you believe it, and at its best, it draws you in, right? Like it's the most emotional thing. So this piece they're performing, along with apparently the Wichita State University Percussion Ensemble, was called War Games.
That had to be where it came from. Wait, had War Games already happened?
This was 89, so yeah, it must have, right? Or was that the first year they did it? 88 or 89, maybe?
It
was before that.
It was, because the first War Games was Four Horsemen versus was it Nikita, Dusty, and the Road Warriors?
And the Road Warriors, that's what I was thinking. Yeah,
okay,
I'm pretty sure that's the first
If we
one.
had Stephen P. New, he would have the exact dates on this.
And it says written by Walter Mays for 10 percussionists and 2 wrestlers. Yeah. We got to find out more about this, man. This is worth a deep dive, I think. Me and you maybe might be the only ones that are interested.
On my channel, I'm going to do a video in 2 weeks on this, and I'm going to be, as a drum teacher, analyzing not only the percussion that's going down, because I do understand that world pretty decently, but we're going to be talking about the wrestling too. And I knew I'd be able to get wrestling on my YouTube channel.
And this is legitimate. It was not a work when Dutch Mantel said it's in the Smithsonian Archive, because this is definitely a PDF from the National Museum of American History. at the Smithsonian. And there it is,
As it
Dutch
should
Mantel
be.
and Jeff Jarrett from 1989.
As it should be. You look, man, I'm a simple man. I've said it on this channel before, and I've said it to everyone in the house. I'm a simple man. If Jeff Jarrett is on my television, I watch that television. I love him. And you know, he's such a he was in a movie where he played a preacher. And I watched some clips on YouTube. You'd have to kind of deep dive to find it. And he's fantastic in that movie. Jeff Jarrett is just a fan. He's like a youth pastor. If Derek was here, I'm sure he would know the fucking movie.
I'm sure he probably has been one of those or has grown up with one over his lifetime.
He's just a talented dude. Jeff Jarrett is good in everything that he does. And he did so well wrangling. Could you imagine having to wrangle those guys who have so much history between each other and thousands and thousands of more stories? It's almost like you could think that each one of these episodes, I want to get into some of the future episodes before we get out of here, that each one of those episodes could be a 10-part series. You could do 10 parts on the history of Continental Wrestling Association.
Well, and from what I've heard from the producers, you know, there's a chance they could bring back almost every one of these territories and do another roundtable. You know, put 4 different guys around the table. You know, and maybe even follow up on the you know, Condello stories and stuff like that. You know, like get another side of it. You know.
Yep.
You know, I'm trying to find a list of the territories because I am really excited about this. And there's going to be 10 episodes coming out, and the one I'm most excited to see, and I was thrilled when the Dark Side of the Ring episode on Macho Man, you know, it had some of the early ICW stuff and footage of young Elizabeth that we hadn't seen before, and young Macho Man Randy Savage. And I'm seeing some of that, and I'd say the average wrestling fan has seen some of it, but it's rare to see it as in such high pristine quality, you know, and restored in such a way. Yeah.
The one that I'm looking forward the most is the Polynesian Pro. Because obviously, you know, that was The Rock's grandmother's promotion, and I'm pretty sure they were in NWA. They had to have been in NWA territory, but it's the one I know the least about. So that's the one that's like, I'm going to get my notepad out and learn, because I don't know anything about Polynesian Pro at all. And as much as, you know, all the pods that I listen to, I haven't really heard that much about that promotion at all. And you got to figure that maybe The Rock might be actually on that episode. You would think that he was. That's the one I'm looking forward to most. You know, when they do, I know they have I think they have a Mid-South. What do you have the episodes up there?
I finally got it. Thanks to Reddit. Appreciate
thanks,
you, Reddit. Shout out to one of the best wrestling sites, Reddit/Squared Circle. Memphis Wrestling, which we've saw. And then the secondary one is going to be Kaufman versus Lawler.
Oh, yeah.
AWA, which I'm anxious to see how much of that, you know, is a retelling of history or accurate. Stampede Wrestling, which I think it's finally we set some of the records straight on Stampede Wrestling.
Yeah. If they get Brett for that, if they have a heart, they need a heart
of some sort. Yeah,
they need a heart.
not like Bruce or Gary. Championship Wrestling from Florida, which is cool. I got a couple posters from late 80s Championship Wrestling from Florida that I love. Mid-Atlantic Wrestling, Jim Crockett Promotions, which I'm absolutely looking forward to.
That's in my DNA.
We'll mainline anything of that they put out right there. Yeah. You know, we'll do shots of that. Polynesian Pro Wrestling, as you said, then WCCW, World Class Championship Wrestling, which, you know, again, the story of the Von Erichs has been told and told and told.
There's so many more stories.
There are others, yeah, and I kind of hope, you know, selfishly, maybe no disrespect to the Von Erichs, but you know,
Iceman Parsons.
Let's hear more about that.
Chris Adams,
exactly. Let's hear more about Gentleman Chris Adams. Let's hear more about even though there was a dark side on
Gino Hernandez,
but still some more to be told there, especially you know, like on the kind of heat that he had. You know, I mean, I feel like there's some stories to be told there, having not been there or been a real fan of World Class. And then Mid-South Wrestling, which is kind of like, you know, sort of sister to that area, you know, in that territory. Yeah. So there'll be hopefully a lot of Bill Watts stories, Cowboy Bill Watts.
I think he's still alive.
I think so too. I don't know how
think
much
Bill
he's
Watts
into
is
the
still
wrestling
alive.
business.
God, don't you hope that like the grumpy Ole Anderson is somewhere in on one of those?
Maybe,
man,
that would be a miracle if they could get Ole Anderson to like play nice enough to be on one of these.
I mainline Ole Anderson being an asshole on tape. Like there's nothing better than Ole just, he's just abuses interviewers and shit. But man, Vice, I think they've got another hit.
Yeah.
I don't know if this is going to be as big a hit as Dark Side because again, it's easier to sell seedy controversy
for sure.
Than just straight nostalgia. But I think, I know there's more wrestling fans that exist that don't watch wrestling now. And this gives them a reason to watch something.
Absolutely. And I think this is targeted at an older demo, because of the nature of it and it being
I'm part of the demo. I'm part of the demo they want.
I know. Finally. I feel like it's us. I was just say that demo is us, because we're of a certain age. We still kind of fantasize about that. We were like not old enough to really experience it, but we read about it in the magazines, and we've tried to soak that stuff up thanks to YouTube and whatever's been available in the networks, and so maybe we'll check in mid-season or something like that and do another wrap-up episode, see if we're surprised. And see if there's anybody that we've predicted might be on some of these episodes. And it'll be interesting to see people come in another season and say, or they hear about this season and say, I want to come on this show now and tell what really happened. I can see that coming around, in a few years as well.
For sure.
And they're working on another season of Dark Side, apparently. And we'll be here to talk about it, whether that happens here on the House of Kayfabe. So make sure you make sure you subscribe. We appreciate you guys watching and hanging with us. And we're going to see you down at WrestleCade. More videos to come for sure in the future, talking about who we're excited to see at WrestleCade this year. And we hope to see you there too. So for Steve Barker, I'm Adam Harris, signing off for the House of Kayfabe.